Carbon is one of the many elements that needs to be cycled or transported through different components of our environment. During this cycling process, carbon is transported between the living components of the environment as well as the non-living components. Therefore, we can observe an equilibrium of carbon among both biotic components as well as abiotic components. The carbon cycle is considered as a biogeochemical cycle because moving carbon around the different components involves biological interactions, geological activities, as well as chemical reactions. Carbon is important because it is a key element in vital nutrients such as fats, carbohydrates, proteins, and most importantly, nucleic acids such as DNA and RNA, which make up all living things. Therefore, for this reason, all living things on Earth are called carbon-based life forms. Carbon dioxide is known as greenhouse gas, which acts to increase the temperature of our planet, which is also known as global warming. This phenomenon is called the greenhouse effect. How does the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere cause the greenhouse effect? Let's observe that. When solar radiation enters the Earth's atmosphere, it will be absorbed by the atmosphere and the Earth, which re-emits the radiation as heat. Some of the heat radiation escape into the space, whereas some heat is prevented from escaping since it is absorbed by greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide, which can trap the heat in the atmosphere. Too many greenhouse gases, like carbon dioxide, cause a runaway greenhouse effect, which leads to global climate change, such as global warming. Producers, consumers, and decomposers. Through the process of living and dying, producers, consumers, and decomposers help cycle carbon through the biotic and abiotic components of the environment. What are producers? They are the organisms which can make their own food. They are also known as autotrophs. Examples of producers are plants, cyanobacteria, and phytoplankton. What are consumers? Consumers in a food chain are living creatures which consume organisms from a different population. What are decomposers? They are the creatures which can break down dead or decaying organisms. Let's observe the steps of carbon cycle one by one. The first step is step A, photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a chemical process performed by plants. In this process, they take carbon dioxide from the air or atmosphere, water from the soil, and use the energy from sunlight to produce glucose and oxygen. A green pigment called chlorophyll helps capture the sunlight needed for the reaction. Step B, cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is a chemical process performed by plants and animals. In this process, they use glucose and oxygen to produce energy. Besides energy, carbon dioxide and water are produced as byproducts. Here is the chemical equation for cellular respiration. Glucose molecules will combine with oxygen molecules to form carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Step C, assimilation. Assimilation is the transfer of carbon through the organisms in a food web. Step D, death and decomposition. During any organism's lifetime, it produces waste matter, which becomes detritus, decomposing organic waste. Likewise, when an organism dies, it remains begin to decompose, and this becomes detritus as well. Step E, fossilization. Fossilization involves ancient plants which have been buried for hundreds of millions of years to produce fossil fuels, oil and natural gas formation. Ancient plants and animals died in the oceans 300 to 400 million years ago. Over time, their remains were covered in layers of sediment. The enormous weight of the sediment produced heat and pressure, which eventually turned the remains into oil and natural gas, which remains under the ground or ocean floor unless it is extracted. Step F. Combustion. Combustion involves the burning of a fuel source that contains hydrocarbons. In the carbon cycle, the majority of human-generated combustions comes from the burning of trees and fossil fuels. Step G. Deforestation. Deforestation involves the cutting down of trees or forests. This results in an indirect increase in carbon dioxide because there are less trees to perform photosynthesis, which removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.